Welcome back to another episode of BootUP. We are live from New York. I've always really wanted to say
And where in New York are we?
that. We are at a Twitch office in New York, actually.
Which you can tell because of the rooming or naming convention, the conference rooms behind us of Vice City and others. So it's
Yep,
kind of
Big
fun.
Apple, 3 a.m.
And what's the topic for today?
We are talking about fintech, and we have two awesome startups here from fintech, Betterment and Even Financial. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves?
I'm Kevin. I'm the CTO at Even Financial.
I'm Ross. I'm one of the lead engineers at Even Financial.
And I'm John, VP of Architecture at Betterment.
Awesome. And by the way, my name is Nikki. I'm a senior technical evangelist at AWS. This is the fourth episode of BootUp where we interview startups about how they got started and how they build on AWS.
Yeah, so previous episodes have been like agriculture,
Food.
one on auto tech, healthcare, life sciences.
Yep.
And the next one next week is,
Game tech.
that's right.
We are in San Francisco. We're going to go back to San Francisco, and it'll be the same week as GDC.
Excellent. I'm Mackenzie, by the way. Should we kick off with about the companies?
Yeah, let's hear a little bit more about what you guys do.
I guess I got the mic, so I can fire that off. So, Betterment is sort of the world's first robo-advisor, sort of invented the category, and have since sort of expanded to help people with solving more and more of their financial life problems. So we've been around for a good long time, and we manage about $15 billion under management at this point.
Wow.
Right. So Even Financial is the leading recommendation and search engine for consumer finance products. We provide this via an API. We provide it via a number of different things you can pop on your page, but at its core, that's what we do.
And we offer financial products like across a bunch of different verticals. We kind of initially focused on personal loans, and at this point, I think we have $600 million in originated personal loans over the 4 years of the company. So.
Wow. So before we dive deeper into like how you guys got your start and where you are today, can you just give us the lay of the land? Like what do you see the fintech space as right now? Do you see that it's easy to get started, hard to get started? There's a lot of regulation. Tell us about how you view the space today.
Sure. So one of the motivations for Even Financial was that like a lot of financial products were moving online, and as a result, it was a pretty fragmented ecosystem. So kind of the goal of what we're doing is to have a unified place to go where you can search across those all those different offerings that were moving more and more online. As far as like getting started. So like something that we kind of work on a lot is things around compliance, things around security and licensing, and like we do spend quite a bit of time on each of those three things. So that is something that you definitely need to contend with when starting up in fintech.
Why the focus on the loan space? What was the attraction to that area?
Yeah, so it was mostly because the API ecosystem there was further along than other verticals. So there is quite a few. So like our goal is to be able to integrate with real-time APIs, and there is a lot of personal loans APIs, and now other verticals are sort of catching up. So we're starting to see savings APIs, starting to see more real-time decisioning on credit cards through APIs, and obviously we're kind of there to integrate as those things become available, and we even kind of are kind of work with people as they develop their APIs and come into that ecosystem.
So what was your MVP original product that you started with that kind of proved this concept for you guys?
Yeah, so the original product was kind of a simpler version of the API that we still use, and it's basically one of the like the most basic value propositions is that like we have a unified API that will then kind of fan out across lots of different, in this case, loan APIs. And so consumers of our API don't need to know all the nuances of like how to connect to these APIs, setting up like contractual agreements with the companies that run the APIs, and so as a result, kind of that initial MVP was like just having that unified interface and then having multiple downstream APIs, and that's like an immediate value add for kind of our first consumer facing partners where they didn't have to care about the details of those downstream APIs.
So who are some of your consumer facing partners that you're working with?
Yeah, so we work with financial blogs. We work with personal finance applications.
Any notable customers that we might know?
So one of the personal finance applications is Empower. We work with Smart Asset, and a few others. Can you think of anything?
Yeah. We have the Penny Hoarder that we work with quite a bit.
Yep.
Trying to think of any other brands.
But that's great. So someone like Penny Hoarder can just hook up with your API one time, have access to hundreds of different loan opportunities or different companies at that point.
Yeah, exactly. They don't even have to hook directly into the API. We provide a number of easy ways to embed an iframe right on your page. Easy, couple seconds of code, drop it on your page, and then they're right in on our platform.
Awesome.
That's really cool.
All right, so what's the question?
Well, it looks like there was multiple questions.
Yeah.
So how do you see the fintech industry today? And then
Sure.
how did Betterment originally get its start?
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, like, I think the fintech industry today is, stronger and more capable than ever. It's easier than ever to get into because there are much more, like reliable and fast and frankly inexpensive rails to ride on, right? Like AWS certainly makes it a lot easier to get your bare bones compliance burden met at the very, very low level introductory sort of maturity level all the way up to the top. Cause you see government agencies in AWS, it's legit. People kind of like it turns out. So yeah, like the availability of increasing like high leverage APIs across the industry is definitely a huge value for bringing new products online. Yeah, so I guess to talk a little bit about Betterment's story, we started off actually a bit ago at this point, right? And things were not quite as mature as they are today.
Yeah.
So we actually had to build quite a bit of our own stack, which actually conversely can be like a really effective tool to leverage if you really want to deliver more value than was necessarily available before. So like one of the things that we went to market with out of the gate was the ability for our customers to hold fractional shares of assets, which meant that we could build you a diversified portfolio with a $10 deposit, which is like kind of an insane thing.
Wow.
And we can continue to rebalance you and keep you right on track for your goals. So like, whenever we were forced to like build our own thing, we were always like, okay, so what's the great version of this thing, and how can we make this better than it was? And if there's an opportunity to ride on top of something else awesome like AWS that somebody already built, we're all about that too.
That's awesome. I mean, there's some really large, like entrenched players in the financial space. How did you get past those huge headwinds in the beginning?
I think, like many startups, it's flying under the radar. They throw shade at you until they start to emulate you. So yeah, like, when we started off, the idea of robotic advice, like robo-advisor was initially like a slur, right? It was like, how's a robot going to do this? And then we just sort of were like, okay, you're going to call us robo-advisor. Okay, we're that.
We're going to be that.
But I mean, to be honest, like we've always actually integrated human advice into our product. It's never been about like cold hard algorithms with no humanity. In fact, so much of our stuff is driven by behavioral finance and interacting with people where their heads are at and getting them to build the right habits and the right behaviors in order to have the outcomes that they want to have. So yeah.
How do you make finance interesting to consumers, right? A lot of people think finance, kind of this boring industry, historically has a bad connotation to it. Like, how do you make it appealing to, your direct consumers?
Well, so we actually, being a behavioral finance shop, we're actually very interested in this question because on some level we want our people to set it and forget it because active engagement in investing, it tends to lead to worse performance.
You always think you know better than the market?
Right. So the opportunity here is to get people, sort of like excited about the relief that they can have, excited about what this brings to your life at a sort of broader level without having to become like a financial wonk in order to get the full benefit of all the stuff that the wonkiest people might be doing it themselves, or that the sort of like the 1% are getting through incredible like high tier advice. So we wanted to bring that to everybody.
Excellent. How big is Even today in terms of engineering teams? And what does it look? What's a typical day like at Even's offices?
Yeah. So right now we are at around 20 people on the engineering side, and at the beginning of 2018, I think we were 6 or 7. So we grew quite a bit in 2018.
And you're still growing now, I assume?
Yep. Yeah. Still hiring. So part of that growth was sort of scaling up like the processes that we use. So we kind of went from operating as like one big team to operating as 2 teams and then 4 teams, and so that kind of informs like our day-to-day workday now. So like across teams, it'll start with stand up and kind of talking about what you did the day before, what's coming up today. One thing that we do a lot of is like we like to do upfront design and like kind of write down what we're going to build and kind of circulate that out among the engineers and the product people. And so that's something that we end up investing quite a bit of time into, both from just like kind of whiteboarding sessions and talking stuff through to kind of writing it down to a document, reviewing that, and kind of narrowing in on like what's like the true MVP of this thing we're trying to build. What's like the first iteration, and yeah.
What's the length of time that it's been since you started to now, and then also the length of time that you grew from 7 to 20 engineering?
Yeah, so I started just about 4 years ago. I was actually
4
the
years.
first employee.
Wow.
And
Employee number 1.
Yeah, it was actually number 1. Me and the guy who I worked with at my previous job ended up both joining on the same day, unbeknownst to each other.
Who was onboarded first? Was it you or the other person?
I forget. 4 years is too long ago to remember.
A lot's probably happened in 4 years.
Yeah.
That's like 20 years in startup time.
Right, I know. And then, so going from 7 to... we were at 7 in January of 2018.
Wow, so that's really fast.
Yeah. We were really... we were successful hiring, so that was really good.
So one problem I see often in companies that are growing quickly is you have a new employee come in and they see a process that's already in place. They see something that's already been defined, and they have trouble questioning it, and they don't realize that no, we just built that process in 5 minutes to solve a problem back then. How do you keep that mentality? How do you keep that culture of being able to evolve things?
Yeah, so the process of like kind of writing out the way that we design things is something that we also do with our process, and so like we call that the RFC process, which is request for comment. And so kind of inherent in that process is like comment and like feedback and like potential change and like versioning and iterating. And that applies to software and then also to our process. And exactly what you said is very true. Like, I make it very clear that like the stuff that we came up with is just like, we were just like, maybe this will work. Let's see how long it lasts. And then it's always like on the table for discussion.
I have a question for John, actually. So you mentioned that you were the first robo-advisor.
Yeah.
There's plenty of them now. How do you guys stay competitive, or what differentiates you now from the other robo-advisors that have surfaced?
Yeah, so I mean, our goal has always been to sort of like put our blinders on and run at the problem of making the financial lives of our customers the best that they can be. Like we acknowledge that there are serious competitors out there. They have an ability to execute. So our focus is executing better indefinitely. We've got to be able to deliver the most compelling product faster, and that's one of the things that, like by taking all of the responsibilities off of our plate that don't involve us making the better product, it just accelerates our ability to do that.
I will say that when I travel internationally and I talk to startups, Betterment comes up as one of the examples of we're trying to build the betterment of this region or this city. So your reach globally of what you're influencing is incredible. Follow up to that is, are you only focused on U.S.? Are there plans to expand internationally? Any thoughts there?
Sure. I mean, like, I can't really speak about like long-term plans or anything, but like it is very true that our product is very heavily optimized for the U.S. market, being tax efficient in the U.S. market. Like, we're able to build a better product for our U.S. customers by virtue of the fact that we're hyper aware of the tax code here and things like that, and we can make tax efficient decisions for you. So like, I think there's a trade-off there. You can choose to be like in all the markets with sort of like a baseline product, or you can go to town on the problem in a specific place. And, you know, maybe there's stories for doing that, you know, at scale across multiple regions, multiple different tax environments. But that's a big build, and we've got a lot of exciting challenges ahead of us. And, you know, maybe that fits in there, but it's really for us about delivering the best product.
How do you see the future of the wealth management space, considering that there are robo-advisors globally and there's many coming up in the US? Like, how do you view the future?
I mean, I think, you know, there's going to be always enough to push each other forward, I think, right? Like the sea change event, I think, is started to happen and will continue to happen, where customers will demand great advice with, you know, enough human interaction and enough automation of the things that can be automated for, like, you know, a very low cost, because that's what they deserve. So like that evolution is just going to continue. You know, we're going to make sure that we're there to serve customers. That's our plan, is to be able to have the biggest impact on customers that we can.
Does Betterment still do the budget auctions for engineering resources?
What is that?
That hasn't happened like at our current scale in a while. So like back in the day, when Mackenzie was briefly at Betterment.
Full disclosure.
So yeah, there was actually a process whereby we would sort of like put global products up and then just resource them off of like a centralized pool. I think that's a specific like scale stage thing. You need a little bit more resource management control at larger scale. We have mechanisms for pushing hard at specific problems and sort of, you know, making sure that we're investing where the investment needs to be made. But they're not quite the same as like the auction driven model. But one thing that I've loved about the evolution of Betterment has been that it's remained incredibly collegial. We're all here for serving the needs of our customers, and man, like a group of people has never like sort of been able to come together behind a mission, despite the varying, you know, internal, like, you know, stakeholder status. So it's been good. I like it.
There are a lot of like highs and lows, like especially in early startup life and even probably now. How do you guys get through them? This is a question for everyone here. So like, you know, is there a favorite brand of ramen that gets you through the day? Like, is there a teddy bear or like wine, whatever it is? Like, I drink a lot of wine. So full disclosure, that's how I got through the tough times. Like, how do you guys get through the highest of highs and the lowest of lows? Like, how do you celebrate, and what gets you through the lowest of lows?
Wow.
Is that a tough question?
I mean, so I think it's an interesting question. I think, you know, how we celebrate has evolved as we've grown. Trying to create like sort of an inclusive environment where it's like, I think that it's too easy in this industry, and it's really just too easy in general to just sort of like throw a bunch of liquor in front of people and call it a social event.
Yeah.
Right? And you know, that's sort of like a planning, resourcing constraint and stuff like that. So yeah, one of the things that we've been really focused on internally as a team is how do we create community, break down barriers between different groups,
Yeah.
and give like that strong like cross-functional signal that might be missing in a siloed organization, by having like intensely, you know, like sort of real personal social events in a way that doesn't, you know, violate people's boundaries, doesn't force people to be thinking about things in terms that don't hit them where they're at. So I don't know, that's sort of a random answer to not quite your question, but
How do you get through the tough times?
Yeah, how do we get through the tough times?
How do you personally get through the tough times?
He races cars.
That is one of the ways that I blow off steam.
There you go.
Yeah, so for like, I don't know, since I was like 23 and like a software engineer with like more money than brains, I got into sort of high performance driving schools where I initially was a student. Now I teach people how to teach other people how to drive on racetracks, and back before I ran out of budget by becoming like a family person, I used to do some wheel-to-wheel racing and stuff like that. But man, that is a way to burn a paycheck. Let me tell you what. Anyways,
So do you still do that at all, or not really?
so as a high performance driving instructor, you get free track time if you're willing to sit in the right seat of like some rando's high performance car on a racetrack.
I want to do this.
Okay, I'll hook you up offline. Let's
Okay,
talk about
sounds
this.
good.
Awesome.
Oh, Walsh9 asks, what kind of performance driving, track or rallycross?
Yeah, track. So road courses, particularly, I drive a lot with the Audi Club. So the Northeast region, we drive at tracks like Lime Rock and New Jersey Motorsports Park, Palmer, Watkins Glen. Yeah.
How about you guys? How do you celebrate the good times, and what gets you through the bad times?
So I certainly don't have a race car, but I was actually looking forward to discussing the giant sandwich that I managed to get the CEO to order for us. Oh, how could you?
Like one of those like 20-foot long Subway sandwiches?
It was certainly bigger than me. Beyond that, it begins to blur. So I actually managed to lay down next to it, took a great photograph.
We have photographic proof.
Oh,
Oh
yes,
my
of the sandwich
God.
being larger than I am.
I really need to see this.
Oh, it's great. But seriously, it's important to be able to celebrate kind of the victories that you have as a team, and be
Yes.
able to come together and sort of be like, yeah, we really like knocked that out of the park. It can really take any form. Like we've gone out to events, we've gone out to lunch. I think lunch is axe throwing. We went axe throwing recently. That was
Axe throwing. That is a new one. I have not heard
it
that
was
one before.
it was certainly fun. I was pretty okay at it. He was not so great at it, but
I was surprised that they allowed
Called
you.
out.
The place had a bar, which surprised me. I didn't think that
Was
was
this
going to be
Kick
illegal.
Axe in Brooklyn?
Yes.
That's a great establishment. Yeah.
yeah. So that was a lot of fun. We've done sushi making together. Yeah, that was a lot of fun, right? That was great. We should do that again. But yeah, it's just important to celebrate. We do any number of different things, even if it's just a good shout out in the office during one of the all hands meetings. Make sure everyone sort of understands that they're impactful and understands that they're doing something for the business and understands that they're helping to contribute to our mission to make this sort of weird financial consumer space like a lot easier to navigate for everybody.
Your team acquired Birch, is that right? Which
Yes.
is kind of it's interesting to me because your company's been around for just about 4 years. In 2015, you're incorporated. And so, what was the motivation behind acquiring a company versus building? You talk a little bit about you think about acquisitions for a startup, and it's usually these later stage, larger companies. And here you are, a small team acquiring this whole other company out of California.
Well, they're certainly stellar. I'd like to let them know, but yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think from a product perspective, one of the motivations is that we knew we were expanding into new verticals, and Birch brought like a very high level of expertise about credit cards, and we're in the process of expanding into credit cards, so that's going to be really helpful. But I think one of the real motivators is that they had a very strong team, and like. We've had on the product and engineering side, we've had immediate impact from the two people from Birch that we've added, and I know on the business side, they've also had a big impact. So yeah.
I'm curious about architecture and infrastructure.
Yeah, I
Julie.
was just about to ask, like, what, where did you guys start on AWS? How has it evolved? What does your architecture look like today? And then if you obviously want to walk us through a diagram, you're more than welcome to show it.
Sure. So yeah, we started on AWS from the very start. We have a pretty simple architecture. We use Scala services and on top of Postgres. And then we also have embedded UIs which use React. As far as the products that we use, we were pretty early adopters of ECS. I think that they announced it, and then one of us decided to use it, and then we've used it ever since. Normally, sorry.
Were you doing something else for containers at the time? Were you waiting for the right opportunity, the right service to come along? And
if I remember correctly, we were using Elastic Beanstalk, which I think, I'm trying to remember how it worked, but I think there was some consumer or container thing going on there. But we switched over to ECS pretty early on. And like our normal pattern is to kind of use more established things and use them conservatively. So moving to ECS right when it got announced was a little bit of a deviation from that, but it ended up being a really good bet because like the product has continued to grow and scale, and it's like really, really nice developer experience. Besides that, we use RDS, we use API Gateway, we use Redshift very heavily for data warehousing. And then we kind of fill in the gaps with Lambda all over the place.
Serverless.
What do you use for BI on top of Redshift?
For what?
For business intelligence on top of Redshift, or like dashboarding?
We're using Looker now.
And is their office close to yours?
So yeah, we started using Looker, and then they would come over and train us, and we eventually realized that we could basically see into their office from our office because we like had an alley between us, and we're just talking about before going online that like there's just, it seems like every company that every tech startup is like within like a 2-block radius.
Yeah, I mean, I had a previous company a block over this way at Tumblr. Like Betterment, you two are I think a block away from each other.
Yeah.
Like if you come into this area of New York City, every building has at least 2 or 3 startups within it, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
What does that do for like the meetup community here in New York? Do you participate in any of the meetups or present at them?
We a decent amount. We're like starting to try to kind of focus on like getting out there a little bit more. I know Ross, do you do any? You go to meetups a decent amount, right?
I've been to like New York Scala a bunch of times. They used to host it over. I think Spotify was right around the corner as well before they moved downtown. So that was always fun. They had a nice selection of cheese. I've been to meetups around Foursquare's around the like near the office. AppNexus is over there, so it's really nice because you get to sort of see inside of all these offices of companies that you've kind of only heard about, which is fun. You get to eat their cake, which is also a good time, and you get to sort of see the same familiar faces around since it's sort of like a nice after work kind of sync up with what the community's up to.
It's like extra company culture almost.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, it's like a nice little clubhouse after. But.
Does it also give you a chance to vet your ideas or something you're thinking about building solution-wise and get feedback from other teams?
Absolutely. We've definitely had the opportunity before to sort of even just personally have a hard problem that you're kind of trying to crack, just like running your head against it. I was doing something like with reflection in our Scala library, and I just went to one of the meetups and I said, hey, like, how would you do this? Because you sounded real good up on stage. So it's nice to have that sort of thing available.
John, what does your AWS architecture look like, and how has it evolved over time?
Sure. So our initial migration to AWS happened shortly before I arrived at Betterment. So I've been there for 5.5 years. Before that, Betterment was founded in Rackspace against like a very limited number of physical servers, which is like, at this point, hard to imagine that's a way that people did business and continue to. So yeah, and over the years we've iterated probably through like 3 or 4 major sort of like architectural inflection points. Like the first version was very much lift and shift style because there was a need to get started, and at the time the team didn't have a whole lot of experience. So like the low impedance mismatch issue that of that lift and shift approach does allow you to get into AWS pretty quickly. Like trade-offs, like getting in with a lift and shift strategy leaves you with a hill to climb as well. So yeah, we went through sort of like static numbers of servers to like a fully automated CI/CD process with that could deploy static numbers of EC2 instances. Moved on from there to auto scaling groups, and at this point, like we're sort of like have a very tight CI/CD process with auto-scaling groups. And then the thing that we're currently building right now is an EKS-backed platform as a service that's aware of monorepos and unirepos, has all of our security tooling baked into the pipeline, baseline consistency across all services, and will allow us to sort of deploy whole ecosystems of related services that can talk to each other, and enable DR and all the fun stuff that.
How about machine learning? Are you guys using machine learning, and what do your machine learning systems look like today?
So machine learning is interesting because as fiduciary advisors, we have to not just do things that work out to be the right thing for our customers,
right?
But we actually have to be able to say why they were the right thing for our customers. So there's a limit to the areas in which you can apply AI ML solutions to things. Now that said, there are a ton of opportunities for sort of helping people find the right product for them at the right time, helping people find the problems in their own behaviors and things like that.
Yeah.
That we're working on actively. And then there's a whole bunch of like pretty cool high-end math and statistical analysis, which used to be called AI like 5 or 10 years ago, which drives a ton of what we do. We've always done Monte Carlo simulations of our portfolios and things like that. There's a lot of sort of really very smart people who do things that I can barely begin to describe, let alone understand. So.
Are you guys using any AWS services to run your machine learning systems or build models?
I think that's true, but I would have to defer to the folks who are directly working on that stuff.
Got it.
So one of the sort of organizational structures we have is we have a research team that's independent and leads engineering. Engineering builds production systems on the back of that research. So it's almost certainly true that stuff like that is being worked with, but like I'm just a little bit too far from it. That's
Got it. No worries. How about you guys? Machine learning today? Thinking
Yeah.
about it?
Yeah, no, we very actively use it. So like one example is so in our API, we are making decisions on which backend APIs to call, and something that we allow financial institutions to do is to be able to say, like, I would like to see a 70% approval rate from your submissions to our API. And so we can use machine learning based upon all the data we gather from user or submissions that we've made to APIs and what the responses have been. We can build a pretty simple regression model to approve or to filter out people who have less than a 70% chance of getting approved on a particular API. And the product we use for that is just the machine learning product in AWS. And it's nice because
SageMaker?
no, so
no,
there's something
machine
that's
learning.
just called machine learning, which is weird because it doesn't fit the other.
Been around for years.
Yeah,
it's
like the
very simple, but it
original
works
one.
really well on
Yeah, and so so we kind of looked at SageMaker. We'd already done some stuff with machine learning. We we're comfortable with the way it works, so we continue to go there. But we are kind of investigating SageMaker a little bit. But kind of the really nice thing about both that and SageMaker is that they give you like you can do your model, and they give you like a very performant endpoint that you can hit in real time to make these decisions, and it works out great for us.
Ross, I hear you have a demo of your API.
I do. Yes.
You guys
very
want to see a
exciting.
demo? Because I definitely do.
Let's fire it up. Okay.
So it's actually a demo of our embeddable UIs.
Yeah. So I guess to speak to this.
Sure. So as we've been talking about a little bit, our core product is our API that lets our partners kind of build their own experience on top of. But we also offer our own embeddable UIs that partners can use to kind of get up and running on the platform in a matter of minutes by embedding an HTML tag into their website, and then they kind of have a full featured marketplace. And Ross is going to set that up.
Yeah, so basically what I'm going to take you through is building out my website. And because I really, really want to just get a fully featured consumer finance marketplace on my page in seconds. So in seconds. So check it out.
Start the clock.
Here we go. So let's check out my website. Pretty
Someone
simple.
start the clock.
Clearly, I'm a big fan of the show. My homepage is exclusively
Love it,
BootUP
love it.
content.
Could use
Yeah.
a designer, but yes.
I've been waiting for you guys to find my site. So here we go. Let's check out what I got HTML-wise. Bring that over here. Okay, come here, buddy. Here we go. Got to wrangle this guy. So here's my website. Very simple, pretty
Basic.
straightforward. Just a little bit of HTML. Don't need to get all crazy with it. Let's see what I could do about adding this marketplace. So if I pull over here, I can actually grab this little piece of HTML code and a little iframe that's been provided to me by Even Financial. And all I got to do is
So
hop
this
over
is like
here.
after I signed up,
Yeah,
and I've
after you
already
signed
working
up.
with you guys. I have this little HTML tag.
Yep, we've spoken to you. We've gotten you your token set up. You're in our system, and you're ready to rock. So here we go. We just drop that in there, one line of code, and let's see exactly what that gets for us. So I'm going to save up my page, and let's see where we are now. Here we go.
Wow.
So just like I wanted, just like I've always wanted, I have my own fully featured consumer finance marketplace dropped on my page in seconds with a line of code. But I'm having a little bit of a problem because these are not my favorite colors. And this is not what I want to see every time I fire up my home page. So we actually let the person who consumes this HTML just change up the themes and styles.
Customize it.
Customize it, yeah, very easily with a little bit of query parameters that you just pop in on that HTML. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull back up my source code and hop over here and
You
grab.
might want to zoom into that code
yeah,
a little
sure.
bit because it's hard to read. There we go. That's better.
So glad that that worked as expected. So here we go. So I'm going to grab my query parameters because I want to mess around with my theme, the color of the border. And I'd like to see a little bit of different colors on the call to action button there on the right you see in green. So here we go. So now I've popped in the border color and I've popped in the color on the call to action. Going to save that up and come back over and see what I've got. Perfect.
Orange.
This is very much
This
more
is
in line.
AWS colors now.
Coincidentally, also my favorite color.
Coincidentally.
So that's pretty good, but sometimes you want to mess around with a little bit more. You want to customize a bit more. So we're going to show you like another quick little couple of query parameters you can pass in there. Mess around with a couple shapes. Here we go.
That's super easy.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of copy and pasting. A lot of the stuff we'll provide for you. We'll help you out with, provide documentation. So here we are. Let's see what we've done now. Let's see how my shapes came out. See what we got now. Oh, look at that. Now we've got ovals where we once had
Oh,
squares.
that's pretty.
And we've got squares where we once had ovals. Very exciting. But not everyone who goes to my homepage, all of my fans, aren't necessarily browsing on a desktop. Maybe they're going to be on their phone. Maybe they
Yeah,
want to see something a little
Probably a
little
cell
different.
phone.
Yeah, because they got to see me on the run. So what I'm going to do here is just mess around with the CSS, go from 100% to a nice 500 pixels. Save that, and let's see how we bounce around. So just picture yourself on my webpage running around. You really need to see this stuff immediately. Can't wait to get home. So now we have this fully responsive situation. Yeah. So this kind of covers a lot of the stuff that you do on the client side, like as somebody who just kind of wants to mess around with the styling on your own. But sometimes we do actually want to make changes across the board. So we have another way of doing that and verifying that.
What about an SDK? So you guys have a way to embed it into the site. You have an API. What about if I just wanted to use the API but an SDK?
We don't currently have an SDK, but it is something that's very much on our roadmap,
On the
and we've
roadmap.
talked about a lot.
Do you guys give feedback to like Upstart? Do you say, hey, Upstart, we showed an offer between Prosper and Upstart, and people picked Prosper over, and these are the terms? And like, do you give that feedback to help kind of drive offers?
Yeah,
to the
so
companies?
so part of what our API is returning is a recommended ordering, and so like the highest recommended offer is going to be the one that we think is going to be the best for that person. That's like our second main usage of machine learning.
But then so if I pick Prosper out of this, do you ever like give that information back to Upstart and say, hey, by the way, we put these offers out here, but you got outbid by these other companies?
So I think that the
question.
business is starting to like think about that type of communication back, where it's like kind of the concept of like benchmark reporting, where you can see where you're ranking like within the network across different demographics and things like that.
Because it'd be cool, because then you're basically driving down the costs for everybody and,
Yep.
and helping the consumers at that point, which
Yeah,
is kind of
exactly.
nice.
Totally.
Yeah.
You're helping
So
the competition.
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to show one more thing that kind of speaks to the way that we're using AWS to serve this stuff. So basically, what you're seeing here is a static artifact that we've uploaded to S3. It gets served through API Gateway and then ultimately through CloudFront. And so that's like a super reliable setup. You're not going to have any uptime issues with that.
Yep.
And then it's also scalable in the sense that it's very easy to deploy artifacts and even artifacts before we even merge them into the master branch. So Ross put together a PR for me to review, which is to make some visual changes to the embed. Here's the code. I don't know what this means, so I want to see the actual visual changes. And so you went all the way back. Oh God. And so our CI is able to make that available to us just by grabbing that Git hash and changing the URL. And because you're just uploading these things to S3, it's kind of like infinitely expandable, and you can kind of you can get like the full look at it before I even approve this PR. And there we go. That's the change.
There's
Looks
the
good.
logo.
Approved. And yeah, so then now I know, instead of relying on my bad HTML CSS knowledge, I can just look at it and know that like it looks good. Let's approve.
That's awesome.
Cool. Sure. Yeah. Oh yeah. And then so like one other way that we have of integrating of allowing our consumer facing partners to integrate with us is we'll provide like a hosted experience for them. So what you're looking at here is a URL that we're hosting. We made a BootUP partner page, and the thing in the middle is just that embed, but instead of embedding it on the person's site, we can just give them a URL that they can go to. Or they can send their users to, I guess, more accurately.
That's awesome. Lot of boot up stuff. Are you guys trying to get free lunch out of me or something?
We get commission out of this. This is great.
What's
This
happening
is
here?
but I mean, in finance, QA is super important.
Yes.
So I'm kind of curious. I mean, that's I love that you can take a snapshot and just see something in action and actually get visual feedback on whether or not it looks correct. I imagine there's automated testing you're doing in place also. Can you talk a little bit about what that automated testing looks like?
Yeah. So at the service level, we rely extremely heavily on unit testing and integration testing. I mean, that's kind of going to be a critical aspect to any continuous deployment pipeline. And then we do a fair amount of manual testing in terms of the UI stuff, and we're building out a framework to do automated testing with the UI as well.
Excellent. And I'm curious, same question for Betterment, on what testing looks like today.
Testing looks good.
Great. Let's get it right there.
I was, Betterment, like so many startups, we're sort of like, sort of in the like founders code kind of mode for a little while, and test coverage starts off like sort of meh, and the tooling around running those tests starts out equally meh.
Yep.
And yeah, so like as we've evolved, like I feel like we've really sort of hit the sweet spot of like developers knowing how to write good tests, and the tooling enabling us to run them at scale, like like in a very high reliability way, short period of time. We can, we're now deploying, as a fintech, tens of times a day on several different applications at once across our entire organization. So like, it's, and then to enable that stuff, we've built some pretty powerful split testing and feature gating stuff, which actually we've open sourced. So yeah, like there's a lot of cool stuff going on, but man, I feel really good about our ability to deliver value quickly and have confidence in it.
So we're like running down to the end here. So I just wanted to ask some like final questions. One, obviously, are you hiring? Tell us what your stack is. We have a lot of developers watching. Would love to know. And then how they can apply. And I'll make sure to post the link in the chat. And then what it would be your advice to an entrepreneur, a developer, entrepreneur that is just getting started or looking to start a company in fintech?
Okay, so yes, we absolutely are hiring. Actually, we're hiring in 2 cities and beyond. Sort of for the first time ever, we just opened our Philadelphia office.
Philadelphia, guys.
And yeah, we've been hanging out at meetups down in Philly and stuff like that recently, and it's been just like a great scene and really awesome to see and begin to participate in that.
Why Philadelphia?
Well, so like on one level, like there's no time zone shift, which is like a really cool quality. There are great schools in Philly, just a great scene. Like it's a community that we've fallen in love with as we've been down there. So that's sort of a big part of it. So yeah, that's our hiring story. Definitely apply at betterment.com.
Betterment.com/jobs. Just betterment.com.
/jobs, probably.
Probably. Okay.
/careers /jobs/careers.html.
I'm gonna throw something in there. Hopefully it works, guys.
Yeah, no, it should be pretty easy to find. If you Google Betterment Jobs, you'll get to us. Yeah, so advice for people starting startups, man, especially if you're looking to get into fintech, like expect the unexpected, expect difficulty, expect longer time frames getting up to speed on those key partnerships that you need in order to run your stuff. It takes some gumption and
some serious commitment.
But like, we've all been there, and yeah, like happy to talk if anybody wants to talk offline about the challenges that you face. It's like it can be tough out there, but it's also extremely rewarding because there's a real opportunity to move the needle for people out there. So anyways, it's been an exciting
How can they
ride for
reach
us.
you if they wanted to talk to you?
So I'm at jmileham, Mileham at Twitter. So DM me, hit me up at john@betterment.com, and yeah, thanks.
So yes, we are also absolutely hiring. One role very important to me is somebody actually on my team. So that'll be that's always fun. As far as like some of the other stuff we have going on.
What's your stack?
Oh, so our stack is the back-end stuff is all written in Scala. So
Scala.
we'll host up our services in that. We do a lot of stuff like Kevin mentioned before on AWS. We pretty much utilize the ecosystem as much as possible to avoid me having to use multi-factor more than once a day. So that's always a nice bonus there.
Yeah, and the one really big focus for us is building out our front end teams. We're kind of historically really focused on the APIs, and now we're.
Oh, bring the mic closer.
Oh.
That's the audience is saying.
So now we're really focused on building out like a robust front end team, and there's
Front end.
Yeah. And
What do you want to build the front end in? Specific frameworks that you're looking for? Like
we've been
React?
using React. Yeah.
And where can somebody go to apply?
This is, I think it's evenfinancial.com/jobs or careers.
Both of you. Okay, I'm going to try jobs. I'm going to try jobs. If it doesn't work, just try careers. Well, it's been awesome having you guys. Is there any last questions from the audience before we cap, or did I miss anything
Yeah,
that
and
you
while
wanted to
people
ask?
think of questions, just a reminder, a week from today, we'll be in San Francisco at Game Developers Conference talking to Nordic gaming startups and others. So if you're
Yep.
interested in kind of
Game
how these
Tech
games
next
are
week.
built behind the scenes, what people are using AWS for to make that happen, tune in, get a little insight in the gaming industry, so that'll be fun.
Yep, it should be a good time.
And yeah, I mean, finance and gaming, the two most thrilling and exciting industries in the world.
It's true.
Excellent. Well, yeah.
Thank
All
you
three of
guys so
thank
much
you.
for coming on to the show.
Thank you.
So just as a last wrap, we have John from Betterment and Ross and Kevin from Even Financial. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We're signing off. We'll see you next week in San Francisco at GDC.